Hello, thank you for coming to my talk. My name is Christopher Zappa. I'm from Lamont-Doherty Earth Observatory of Columbia University. Today I'm going to present to you our project Ikavik Sikakun, bridging the scientific and indigenous communities to study sea ice exchange in Arctic Alaska. This was a project that was funded by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, and the project team is listed below with PIs and advisory council members, which I will go into more detail in a moment. So the consequences of sea ice change are varied. It can impact communities along coastal regions, it can impact marine mammals, and indigenous traditions. And it's threatening a way of life. And specifically, we're looking at how this impacts the Kotzebue, Alaska. So an overview of the talk. I'm going to outline the Ikavik Sikakun project. I will specifically go over our community-based approach to research design, outline the value of indigenous partnerships, and highlight answers to community-driven research questions. And we have I'll allude to a bunch of other talks that you can go and look at separately. So as I mentioned, the project is Ikavik Sikakun. It comes from, or it's taking its name from Inupiaq for ice bridges. This project has successfully built bridges between a diverse team of scientists and indigenous knowledge holders to study the changing sea ice environment of Kotzebue, Alaska, and Kotzebue Sound. We have broken new ground by co-producing our hypotheses in partnership with an Indigenous Elder Advisory Council to help develop these research questions that cut across disciplinary boundaries and address the needs of both the local and scientific communities. And to share our story more broadly in a way that respects the oral traditions of Indigenous knowledge, our team also includes an ethnographic filmmaker who has been documenting each step of our unique research journey. Over the past 3 years, with continued guidance from our advisory council, we have designed and carried out a research plan to observe the sea ice and marine mammals in Kotzebue Sound and how these come together as habitat and hunting grounds. So here is our advisory council, which is made up of Cyrus Harris, John Goodwin, Bobby Schaefer, and Ross Schaefer. There's a team of us from Columbia University, myself, Ajit Subramaniam, Nathan Loxog, and Carson Vitti. Alex Whiting was our subsistence and environmental specialist in the native village of Kotzebue. Our ethnographer and videographer was Sarah Betcher from Farthest North Films. Andy Mahoney and Donna Hauser led a team from the University of Alaska Fairbanks to study, Andy studying sea ice geophysics and Donna studying marine mammal biology. And a student, Kate Turner, from the University of Alaska, and a student, Jessica Lindsay from the University of Washington. So as I mentioned, the project is very unique in that it's based in community-based research design. So it begins and ends with community engagement, and this kind of the circular schematic on the right here starts at the top with community engagement with our research team, with local observers and guides. We have workshops and interviews with the local advisory panel, and we all work together to come up with a pair of research questions, or a set of research questions that leads to a science observing plan. And it's very circular here because we want to highlight the fact that we are always circling back to our community and our local advisory board. So, we've engaged the community from the very beginning, before we even developed our research questions. And this ensures that the observing plan meets the science, the community, and the legacy goals. So those are the project objectives. Understanding the mechanisms and impacts of implications of sea ice retreat in the Arctic for the global scientific community and local stakeholders. So that's our science objective overall. In the community, we want to develop partnerships between scientists and local residents to increase capacity of the local communities to address research needs important to the community. And the legacy, which is to document the progress of the project as a potential model for future community-based collaborative science endeavors in the Arctic. So, as I've kind of focused, our co-production of research questions is at the core of this project. So we've done this in a few ways. We've interviewed with the community members, so there's an exchange of knowledge, and we also have an advisory council that plays multiple roles, both as knowledge holders and enablers of new knowledge, which we'll allude to later. So this is just a picture of the group, some of the people in the group, here's Cyrus Harris, John Goodwin, Bobby Schaefer, there's Andy Mahoney and Donna Hauser, and Alex Whiting. We're all in Kotzebue. Here's the whiteboard that we used to develop our research questions with the advisory council. Here is the whiteboard itself. At the end of a day, here are the research questions that we came up with after lots of discussion over 2 or 3 days, or over the whole, initially over 2 or 3 days, and then over the course of several visits back, refining these questions. And continually working with the advisory council, both in developing these questions and in making the measurements and exchanging knowledge. So here are the questions. I won't go into all of them or highlight all of them. We focused on a few of them as to what we would be able to answer initially, and some of them were based on what was available at the time, what observations we could make in the beginning. There was an additional question after we started making measurements, because in 2018 and 2019 there was very little sea ice in Kotzebue Sound, and the elders thought this was very odd, and it's something that we should look at. So our evolving science plan is the co-production of research questions with community elders. This allowed us to form hypotheses more efficiently, and it also grounds the work in the interest of the local stakeholders. So one of the questions was, what are the environmental factors that control marine mammal of Kotzebue Sound? Bearded seals, or ugric, require opening to form before you can enter the sound, and it's not clear how much open water they need, and the sequence of events is typically leading to breakup of the ice is also unclear. So it requires an understanding of the local mechanisms that promote this ice fracture and this breakup, as well as the sea ice used by the different species. Another question, which we did focus on, which was, what are the environmental factors that control the length of the bearded seal hunting season in Kotzebue Sound? So once they're able to come in, how long are the local community able to hunt ugric? So the ugric hunting season requires the channel through the landfast ice to reach loose ice flows by the boat, and for some seasons have been cut short due to the rapid loss of the ice in the sound. So this requires an understanding of the mass and momentum balance of the sea ice in the sound, as well as the ecology of the sea ice used by the bearded seals, or the ugric. So what is the study region of Kotzebue? The Inupiaq community in Kotzebue is around 3,250 people. It's situated on the Baldwin Peninsula. It's a large, shallow embayment. It has extensive sea ice or landfast ice in the winter out here to the sound. It's influenced by both the Noatak and the Kobuk rivers, and it's important migration corridor for seabirds and marine mammals. And it's an important habitat for ringed and bearded seals, Nachik and Ugric. So as I mentioned, the sea ice was significantly different in 2019. So in white, this shows the percentage of years or percentage of ice coverage in previous years. So white means 100% of the previous years going back to 2000 were covered by sea ice, and this shows 2019. So there was significantly less sea ice. So if we zoom in on Kotzebue Sound, this is what the traditional landfast ice coverage comes out to. The edge of the sound. In 2019, it was basically open by April. And Bobby Schaefer, one of our elders, commented that we used to be able to come out here at this time of year because we knew the ice was going to be at least 5 foot thick. Normally, it's frozen solid all the way through out to the outside of the lead, so this front of landfast ice, but no, this is unheard of, meaning this anomalous or this unprecedented year of 2019. And again, the Kobuk and the Noatak are important. So what are the roles, relative roles of the ocean, the river, and the atmosphere in this freezing and melting of the sea, of this landfast ice and its breakup, which is critical to the Ugric hunting season? I just want to, so there's another talk on this topic. So for details on this sea ice variability and the breakup of Kotzebue Sound, please go see Andy Mahoney's talk in C069 and Carson Whitty's poster in C065-08 to see our measurements on the ice itself and what impacts they have on answering our questions. But the quick answer is that the ocean in the fall and winter, there's a salty ocean which is warmer than the freshwater, that's just closer to freezing. So the freshwater floats on top of the ocean water and buffers the heat away from the ice, allowing it to freeze. In the spring and the winter, the ocean water is closer to freezing and the river water is further from freezing, so it's allowing it to melt more quickly. He has a concern that when the ice edge is so close to town, when it breaks up, like in 2019, the Ugric local to Kotzebue Sound are forced to concentrate along this ice edge. So he's very concerned about the possibility of overhunting animals. And hunting Ugric is part of the subsistence living. And I'd hope you visit Donna Hauser's talk on in SY 023-18 on the co-production of knowledge and its approach to ice loss constraints on indigenous hunting opportunities for marine mammal resources in the Northwest Alaska. So the takeaway on this is that there's a significant decrease in the duration of the Ugric hunt, and that Kotzebue Sound breakup occurs significantly earlier than in the past years.
On the horizon here, you can see some ice piles. What we call
I also wanted to highlight the value of
so I believe
partnerships,
it was in February when we had a big storm that happened, and it was sometimes after February after the ice formed.
Cyrus Harris also
over
described
here
how the impacts of the south and west wind on the sea ice.
We had this west wind that this out here I would consider landfast ice. It's attached to the bottom. But beyond that, you know, wherever on the open part, it's questionable whether it's stable or gonna remain there. But this side of the piled ice would be considered landfast ice, and it kind of happened late in the year, to where this ice that we're standing on is still developing.
And what we've noticed, or what we've observed in measurements. So the elders pointed to strong reversals in wind direction leading up to sea ice breakup. Here's the sea ice in May 9th, 2019. Here's May 14th, 2019, and you see it broke, basically the channel broke up and that ice broke away. And this coincided over here with a direct shift in the wind that kind of maybe that potentially added to that, why it broke up, in coupling with the warming of the river water that we talked about earlier. I also want to highlight that we made measurements from UAVs, and these UAVs were used to study the atmospheric boundary layer, and I hope you go visit Nathan Lockstock's talk in C045-8. So early community engagement promotes effective integration of Indigenous knowledge, so engage early and often. Indigenous knowledge holders can enable new knowledge through co-design of hypotheses, so questions you would never think to ask are useful. And co-production of knowledge must be shared, so story time is important. So feel free to contact us at our site and at my email address. Thank you very much.